The old recipe box sat in the middle of my kitchen table the morning everything began. By sunset, my daughter had sold it for $12, called it clutter in front of my granddaughter, and smiled like she had done me a favor. She did not know my husband had hidden something under the lid. She did not know a lawyer would soon place that same box back on a desk and ask her one question she could not answer. It was dark walnut, worn smooth by decades of careful hands. The brass latch had never closed properly, but my late husband always smiled and said it had survived longer than both of us expected. Inside were handwritten recipes, faded note cards, and little reminders from the years we built our bakery together. To anyone else, it probably looked ordinary. To me, it held the best years of my life. When Natalie walked in carrying large trash bags, I knew she had already made up her mind. "Mom, we're finally going to help you clear this place out," she said. Mark followed with empty boxes but avoided my eyes. Clara came in last. Before she greeted me, she looked at the recipe box and smiled. Natalie moved quickly through my kitchen, separating everything into piles. Keep. Donate. Throw away. She worked with the confidence of someone convinced that memories only mattered if they saved space instead of taking it. I stayed quiet and watched. Then her hand reached toward the recipe box. Clara stepped forward first. "Mom, not that one. Grandma still uses it." Natalie barely looked at her. "It's just an old box, sweetheart. We can scan the recipes." Clara gently rested her fingers on the lid. "But Grandpa wrote in it." For a moment, nobody spoke. I remembered my husband standing beside me before sunrise, writing tiny notes beside new recipes while flour covered the counter. Those pages carried more than ingredients. They carried years of sacrifice neither Natalie nor anyone else had ever seen. Natalie lifted the box anyway. "It's collecting dust," she said. "Honestly, Mom, this is why your house feels like a museum of things nobody wants." Her words hurt more than I expected. Not because she wanted to clean the house. Because she believed the life inside that box had no value anymore. Clara looked at me, hoping I would stop her mother. I didn't move. Outside, a second-hand dealer had arrived to collect the furniture Natalie had already decided to sell. He picked up the recipe box, opened it for only a second, then shrugged. $12. Natalie answered before I could. "That's fine." The number settled over the room like cold rain. $12. That was all a stranger thought my husband's handwriting, my bakery, and 35 years of memories were worth. Mark shifted uneasily but stayed silent. Clara whispered, "Grandma." I wanted to reach across the room and pull the box back into my arms. Instead, I folded my hands together. "If that's what you want," I said quietly. Natalie nodded without hearing what my silence really meant. The dealer tucked the box under one arm and walked toward the front door. I watched it disappear from the kitchen where it had belonged for decades. Clara lowered her head. Mark looked away. Natalie was already sorting the next cabinet as though nothing important had happened. Standing there, I realized something far more painful than losing an old wooden box. My daughter believed she understood its value after looking at it for less than a minute. She never wondered why I had protected it for so many years. She never asked what might still be inside. And before this story goes any further, I want to ask you something. If someone in your family sold the one object that carried a lifetime of memories, would you have stopped them immediately, or would you have stayed silent long enough for the truth to reveal itself? After the box was gone, Natalie did not slow down. She stood in my kitchen with a clipboard she had brought from home, making notes as if my house were a business project. Every cabinet became a task. Every shelf became a problem. Every old thing became something that needed to be handled. We have to be practical, Mom, she said. You can't keep living surrounded by all this. All this. She meant the blue mixing bowls from my bakery. The aprons I had washed 1,000 times. The cookie tins my customers used to bring back every Christmas because they knew I would refill them for half price. Then she looked toward the hallway and said, and eventually, we need to talk about the lake house. I felt my chest tighten. The lake house had not been mentioned in years. But I knew what it was worth now. Nearly $300,000, maybe more if Natalie found the right buyer. That was why her voice changed whenever she mentioned it. Not seriously. It was small, weathered, and quiet, with peeling white paint and a back porch that faced the water. To Natalie, it was property. To me, it was something else entirely. What about it? I asked. Natalie capped her pen. It's sitting there. Empty most of the year. Taxes, repairs, insurance. It makes no sense to keep it. Mark glanced at me, then looked away. That look told me he had heard this plan before. I didn't answer right away. My mind went back to the bakery, to mornings when I arrived before daylight and left after the streetlights came on. 35 years of flour under my nails. 35 years of smiling when my feet hurt. 35 years of saying yes to one more birthday cake, one more wedding order, one more holiday tray. People thought the bakery was charming. They did not see the ice packs on my wrists after Christmas week. They did not see my husband sitting at the back table, counting bills twice because we were trying to save without saying what we were saving for. That lake house was not luck. It was patience. It was missed vacations, repaired shoes, second-hand coats, and years of pretending we did not want more than we had. Natalie only saw what it could sell for. It could help everyone, she said. Clara's school, my business, your care later on. We could turn it into something useful. Useful. I looked at the empty spot on the counter where the recipe box had always sat. A few minutes earlier, she had sold the history of my hands for $12. Now she was speaking about the lake house in the same voice. As if value only existed after something was converted into cash. Mark cleared his throat. For one small second, I thought he might say something. He didn't. He picked up a stack of plates and asked, "Where do you want these, Nat?" Nat. Not Eleanor. Not your mother. Not maybe this is too much. Just Nat. That was when I felt the second wound of the day. Natalie had pushed, but Mark had made room for her to push. He had seen Clara's face. He had seen mine. He knew the box mattered. Still, he chose the safest place in the room, which was anywhere away from the truth. Clara came back into the kitchen holding one of my old recipe cards. "Grandma," she said softly, "did Grandpa really write this one?" It was the cinnamon roll recipe. The corner was stained with butter, and my husband's handwriting leaned badly to the right. "Yes," I said. He changed the icing 3 times before he admitted mine was better. Clara smiled, but Natalie reached for the card. "Sweetheart, don't get attached to every little thing." Clara pulled it close to her chest. "It's not little." For the first time that morning, I saw irritation flicker across Natalie's face. "We cannot build a future out of old paper," she said. No one spoke after that. I looked at my daughter and finally understood that the recipe box had not been an accident. It was not one careless sale. It was the beginning of a larger clearing. First the box. Then the papers. Then the lake house. Then anything that reminded her our family had a past she could not polish, stage, or sell. And somewhere in that silence, I felt something inside me go still. Natalie thought she was cleaning my house. But she was showing me exactly what she planned to erase next. After the truck left, the house became too quiet. Not peaceful. Empty in the wrong place. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the spot where the recipe box had always sat. There was a pale square in the dust, the exact shape of it. 35 years in one place, and all it left behind was a clean mark on old wood. I did not call Natalie. I did not ask Mark why he had stayed silent. I reached for a cloth, wiped half the counter, then stopped. Wiping that square away felt like admitting she had the right to remove it. So I left it there. The afternoon moved slowly. I put one cup in the sink. I folded one dish towel. My hands kept reaching toward the missing box, the way they used to reach for a recipe without looking. Then the phone rang. The number belonged to Brooks Secondhand, the little store on Maple Street. I knew the owner, Helen Brooks. She had bought display racks from my bakery. She was practical, but never careless. I answered carefully. Helen? Her voice was low. Eleanor, I hope I'm not bothering you. No, I said. What is it? That recipe box your daughter sold today, she said. Did you mean to let it go? I closed my eyes. No, I said. But I let it leave. Helen breathed out softly. I thought so. Something about it didn't feel right. What do you mean? I was cleaning it before pricing it, she said. The lid is heavier than it should be. And there's a seam underneath I don't think belongs there. I looked at the pale square on my counter. For the first time since Natalie had walked through my door, the sadness inside me sharpened into attention. Is it still there? I asked. Yes. I put it aside. I'm coming now. I took my purse, locked the back door, and drove across town. Every red light felt personal. Every minute felt like one more chance for the box to disappear again. Brooks Secondhand smelled like old books, lemon polish, and raincoats. Helen stood behind the counter. She only nodded toward a shelf near the back. And there it was. My recipe box. A small white tag hung from the brass latch. $12. Seeing that price again hurt worse in the store than it had in my kitchen. In my kitchen, it had been insult. Here, under fluorescent lights, it looked like a verdict. I picked it up with both hands. The box was warm from the sun through the window. When I lifted it, I felt what Helen meant. The lid carried a weight it should not have had. Not much. Just enough for a woman who had opened it 1,000 times to know something was different. Helen came to my side. I didn't open anything. I thought you should see it first. Thank you, I said. My voice sounded calm. Inside, I was not calm at all. I carried the box to the counter and opened my purse. Helen shook her head. Eleanor, you don't have to buy back your own memories. Yes, I said, placing $12 down. Today I do. She looked ashamed, though none of this was her fault. I tucked the box against my chest. I did not explain. I did not open it in the store. Whatever was hidden under that lid had waited this long. It could wait until I was home. But as I walked back to my car, I knew one thing clearly. Natalie had sold the box without ever knowing what she held. And this time, before anyone else touched it, I was going to find out. I placed the recipe box on my kitchen table like it was something fragile. The house was quiet again. Not peaceful. Watchful. The pale square on the counter was still there, where the box had sat for years. I set it inside that mark, and for one moment the room looked almost right. Then I touched the lid. Helen had been right. It was heavier than it should have been. I had opened that box thousands of times. My hands knew its weight the way they knew dough when it had risen enough. This was different. I turned it under the kitchen light. The wood underneath was darker near one edge, as if a strip had been fitted in and stained to match. I ran my thumbnail along the line. It caught. A hidden seam. My breath stopped. "Frank," I whispered. I brought out the small paring knife I used for apples, slid the tip under the edge, and worked slowly. I did not know what I was opening, and that made my hands shake. The panel loosened with a soft click. Inside was a flat space I had never known existed. And in that space lay an envelope. It had yellowed at the corners. My name was written across the front in my husband's hand. Eleanor. Just that. I sat down. For a few seconds, I only held it. Frank had been gone long enough for grief to change shape, but not long enough for his handwriting to stop feeling alive. Finally, I opened it. The letter inside was short. My eyes caught only pieces. The lake. Clara. When the time is right. Trust Samuel Price. Do not let Natalie rush you. That last line made the room go cold. Frank had known. Maybe not the trash bags. Not the $12 tag. But he had known our daughter's hunger to turn old things into quick answers. Beneath the letter was a folded packet of papers. At first, I thought they were old receipts. Then I saw the letterhead. Legal pages. Signatures. Dates. A copy of a deed. A supplemental will. And then I saw Clara's name. Not Natalie's. Clara Whitaker Hayes. My granddaughter. I read that line 3 times before I understood it. The lake house was to pass to Clara when she turned 21. Until then, it was protected. Not sold. Not borrowed against. Not used to fund anyone's dream. Protected. My hands went cold. That little house by the water, the one Natalie had spoken about like an unused chair, had already been placed beyond her reach. I spread the papers across the table. There were notes attached in his hand. The bakery account. The down payment. Repairs paid from our savings. Dates from years when I remembered working until my ankles swelled. The lake house had not been family luck. It had been our labor. And Frank had made sure the proof was tucked inside the one thing Natalie was most likely to dismiss. Then fear found me. What if Frank had not protected enough? What if I was already too late? I was a baker, not a lawyer. A signature looked official to me, but official looking was not the same as protected. I looked again at the letter. Trust Samuel Price. Samuel had handled the bakery sale and our wills. He was careful, dry, and impossible to hurry. I picked up the phone. My finger hovered over Natalie's name first. Habit can be a terrible thing. Some part of me still wanted to explain before I acted. Still wanted permission from the child who had sold my life for $12. I put the phone down. Then I picked it up again and called Samuel Price's office. Is everything all right, Mrs. Whitaker? The receptionist asked. I don't know yet, I said. I found something Frank left in the recipe box. There was a pause. What kind of something? Papers about the lake house. And a letter telling me to trust Samuel. Her voice changed. Can you bring them in today? I looked at the open box, the hidden panel, the letter, and Clara's name lying in the middle of my kitchen table. Yes, I said. Today. When I hung up, I did not feel angry anymore. I felt awake. Natalie had thought the box was clutter. Mark had thought silence would keep peace. Clara had only known it mattered because love had taught her to look closer. But now I knew something none of them did. The box had not come back to me empty. It had come back carrying the one truth that could change everything. Natalie called before I could leave for Samuel Price's office. I looked at her name on the screen and let it ring twice. Not because I was afraid to answer. Because I wanted to hear my own breathing first. When I picked up, her voice was already moving fast. "Mom, I've been thinking about the lake house," she said. "We shouldn't wait too long. The market is good right now." I looked at the recipe box on the table. The letter and papers were back inside, hidden again under the lid. "The market," I said quietly. "Yes. And honestly, it would be better to make decisions while everything is simple. Before repairs pile up. Before taxes get worse. Everything is simple." That was how Natalie spoke when she had already decided my answer did not matter. She went on about agents, timing, cleaning fees, and how the money could help Clara later. She sounded practical. Sensible. Almost kind, if you did not know what she had sold that morning. I did not tell her what I had found. I only said, "That house is not something to rush." She gave a little sigh. "Mom, this is exactly what I mean. You get attached, and then nothing ever moves forward." Attached. As if love was a defect. After we hung up, I stood with the phone still in my hand. Natalie believed I would resist a little, then tire, then give in. That had worked for her before. It would not work this time. A few minutes later, Mark came to the back door. He did not knock with confidence. Just 2 soft taps, like a man hoping no one would answer. When I opened it, he looked past me toward the kitchen table. "Is Natalie here?" he asked. "No." He nodded, then rubbed one hand over his jaw. "I wanted to check on you." That was not the truth. Not all of it. I stepped aside and let him in. His eyes landed on the recipe box immediately. He looked relieved and ashamed at the same time. "You got it back," he said. "I did." "That's good." "Yes," I said. "It is." The silence that followed was not empty. It was crowded with everything he did not want to say. Finally, he lowered his voice. "She shouldn't have sold it like that." I looked at him. "No. She shouldn't have." He swallowed. I should have said something. There it was. Small. Late. But there. "Yes," I said. "You should have." He flinched, and I almost softened. Almost. But I thought of Clara's face. I thought of Natalie saying the lake house should be made useful. I thought of all the years silence had been mistaken for peace in this family. Mark touched the back of a chair. "I didn't want to make it worse." "That is how it got worse," I said. He had no answer. Before he left, Clara called from his car through the open doorway. "Grandma, do you still have the cinnamon roll recipe?" Her voice did something to me that Natalie's never could. It reached the place where anger turned back into purpose. "I do," I said. "Safe and sound." Clara smiled. "Good. I want to learn it again sometime." "You will." I meant it more deeply than she knew. After they drove away, I opened the recipe box one more time. Not the hidden panel. Just the top, where the old cards sat in their familiar rows. Clara still remembered. That mattered. She had not learned to measure love only by what it could sell for. Not yet. I would not let Natalie teach her that if I could stop it. So I gathered everything carefully. The letter. The legal papers. The deed copy. The supplemental will. I slid them into a plain folder, then placed that folder inside my bag with the recipe box wrapped in a towel beside it. I did not call Natalie. I did not warn Mark. For the first time in a very long time, I did not ask anyone in my family for permission to protect what was mine. I locked the kitchen door, held my bag close, and walked to the car. Samuel Price was waiting. And whatever happened next, it would happen with the truth on the table. Samuel Price did not ask many questions. He took the recipe box from my hands, then the folder, then Frank's letter. He placed everything on his desk in a neat line, as if the order itself mattered. I sat across from him with my purse in my lap. My fingers were locked so tightly together they had started to ache. Samuel read the letter first. His face did not change. That was one thing I had always trusted about him. He never performed concern. He simply absorbed facts until they had nowhere left to hide. Then he unfolded the legal papers. I watched his eyes move down the page. Once, he stopped and went back to the top. Then he reached for his glasses, though he was already wearing them, caught himself, and kept reading. That was when I knew. This was not a small misunderstanding. Finally, he looked up. "Eleanor," he said, "this is more serious than you may realize." My throat tightened. "Are the papers real?" "They appear to be," he said. "And if these copies match what is on file," he said, "Natalie cannot sell the lake house. She cannot borrow against it. She cannot transfer it. And if she has already contacted an agent, she may have created a serious legal problem for herself." For a moment, I heard nothing except the clock on his wall. Cannot be sold. Those 3 words felt like air entering a room sealed for years. Samuel tapped one page with his finger. Frank created a supplemental will and supporting instructions. Clara is named clearly. The property is protected until she reaches 21. I looked down at my hands. So Natalie has no right to touch it? "Not without challenging documents she may not be able to challenge," he said. "And she should not be discussing sale, transfer, or use of that property as if it belongs to her." A small part of me wanted to cry. Another part wanted to laugh. But I did neither. I had spent years saying very little. That afternoon, the truth no longer needed my voice. If you value stories where patience finally meets justice, stay with me. This one had not reached the room where it mattered most. Samuel leaned back and folded his hands. "Eleanor, I need everyone present." My stomach turned. Everyone? Natalie. Mark. Clara, if you are comfortable with that. They all need to hear the same facts at the same time. I thought of Natalie's voice on the phone. The market is good right now. I thought of Mark looking away. I thought of Clara holding that recipe card. "She's 15, I said. "She is also the person named in these papers," Samuel said gently. That settled it. I nodded. Then she should hear it. I did not call Natalie myself. Samuel's office did. That made it harder for her to turn it into another family argument before the truth was ready. They arrived late in the afternoon. Natalie came in first, wearing the expression she used when inconvenience offended her. Mark followed, pale and quiet. Clara stepped in last, looking from me to the recipe box on Samuel's desk. "Mom," Natalie said, "what is this about?" "I have a work call in 40 minutes. Samuel did not answer her right away. He waited until everyone sat. I kept my hands folded in my lap. The recipe box sat between us all, the brass latch facing Natalie. For the first time that day, she looked at it carefully. Samuel placed his hand on the lid. "Before we begin," he said, "there are some facts about this box and the lake house that all of you need to hear together. And Natalie's impatient face changed just enough for me to know she had finally realized this was not about clutter anymore. Samuel rested one hand on the recipe box, then turned it so everyone could see the underside of the lid. Natalie gave a short, impatient laugh. "Is this really necessary?" Nobody answered. Even Natalie stopped pretending to be bored. Clara leaned forward without realizing it. Mark's eyes stayed fixed on the box. Samuel turned it slowly beneath the light, studying the hidden seam one last time before touching it. "Some things only reveal themselves," he said quietly, "when someone has cared enough to keep them." Samuel did not look at her. He pressed his thumb against the hidden seam, slid the panel loose, and lifted it away. The room went still. From that shallow space, he removed the envelope first. Then the folded legal papers. Then the deed copy and the supplemental will. He laid them on the desk one by one. Natalie's face changed. Not much. Just enough. She stared at the papers as if they had appeared out of thin air. "That was inside the box?" Clara whispered. Samuel nodded. "Yes." I looked at Natalie. "The box you sold for $12. Her eyes moved to me, then away. Samuel picked up Frank's letter. "This was written by Franklin Whitaker," he said. "It names Eleanor, Clara, and the lake house. I'm going to read the relevant parts." My breath caught at Frank's name. Samuel's voice was even, but the room seemed to bend around every word. He read that Frank had saved the lake house for Clara. That he wanted her to have one place in the world that could not be sold out from under her. That the recipes mattered because they were proof of where the family began. Then Samuel read the line I had not been able to say aloud myself. "If Natalie tries to hurry Eleanor, trust Samuel Price." Clara covered her mouth. Mark lowered his head. Natalie sat very straight, but all the color had left her face. I could barely look at the letter. Frank had been gone, but somehow he was still sitting there with us, calm as ever, making sure the truth had a chair at the table. Clara's voice trembled. "Grandpa wanted me to have the lake house." Samuel placed the letter down carefully. "He wanted it protected for you." Then he turned to the legal papers. The supplemental will and supporting instructions name Clara Whitaker Hayes as the future beneficiary of the lake house. She receives control when she turns 21. Natalie's head snapped up. "Wait. What?" Samuel continued. "Until then, the property is restricted. It is not to be sold, transferred, borrowed against, or used as collateral by Natalie or anyone acting on her behalf." The silence after that was almost physical. I saw it reach Natalie first. The plan she had spoken about so easily was gone. Not delayed. Not complicated. Gone. Clara looked stunned, not happy exactly. More like a child who had just been handed a responsibility too large to understand. Mark kept his eyes on the desk. I watched his face as Samuel explained the signatures, dates, and filing references. Mark's shoulders slowly folded inward. He had watched Natalie sell the box. He had stayed quiet when Clara tried to stop her. And now he understood that the thing he had allowed to leave my kitchen carried his own daughter's future inside it. He pressed both hands together. "I didn't know," he said. No one answered. Because that was not enough. Not anymore. Natalie found her voice before anyone else did. "Well, how was I supposed to know?" she said. "Nobody told me there were legal documents hidden in an old recipe box." Samuel looked at her then. "I did too." Natalie's voice climbed. "This is ridiculous. Who hides a will under a lid? Who does that and then acts like I did something terrible for not magically knowing?" Clara flinched. Mark finally looked up. And I felt the old habit rise in me. The one that wanted to soften the room. To calm Natalie. To make the hard truth easier for everyone else to swallow. But I did not move. Natalie turned toward me. Mom, you let this happen. You let me sell it without saying anything. There it was. The twist she always reached for. If she could not control the truth, she would try to control the blame. I looked at my daughter, then at the box, then at Frank's letter lying open on the desk. For years, I had answered anger with quiet. This time, my quiet had something behind it. Samuel folded his hands. Mark held his breath. Clara watched me as if she needed to know whether love could still have a backbone. And I knew exactly what I was going to say next. You are right about one thing, I said. Natalie blinked, as if she had expected me to apologize. No one told you what was inside the box. Her shoulders loosened a little. Then I continued. But no one told you to sell it either. The room went silent again. Not shocked this time. Listening. You picked it up. You decided it was old. You decided it had no value. You ignored Clara when she asked you not to sell it. You ignored me because you thought my silence meant weakness. Then you let a stranger price it at $12 and called that practical. Natalie opened her mouth, but I raised one hand. Gently. Not angrily. Don't turn your choice into my trap. For the first time, she had no answer ready. Samuel adjusted the papers in front of him. The property will remain protected under the terms Frank established. Clara's interest is locked until she turns 21. No sale. No transfer. No loan. No use as collateral. Natalie looked at Samuel. So I can't do anything with it? That is correct, he said. Even for Clara's benefit? Especially then, Samuel said. The protection exists because Frank wanted Clara's benefit defined by the document, not by someone else's immediate need. Clara sat very still. I looked at her and softened my voice. This is not a burden for you, sweetheart. It is something your grandfather wanted protected until you are old enough to understand it. Clara nodded, but her eyes stayed wet. Natalie looked away. For once, the room did not bend around her discomfort. Mark finally spoke. Nat, he said quietly, stop. She turned on him. Excuse me? He swallowed, but this time he did not look away. You sold it. Clara asked you not to. Eleanor said nothing because you never gave her space to speak. And I stood there and let it happen. His voice broke on the last part. That's on me too. I kept telling myself that staying quiet was protecting this family. He lowered his eyes. Now I see all it really protected was the wrong decision. It was not a grand speech. It did not erase anything. But it was the first honest thing I had heard from him all day. Natalie stared at him as if betrayal had walked through the wrong door. I felt no triumph. Only a tired kind of relief. Samuel gathered the deed copy and the supplemental will into a folder. Frank's letter stayed on the desk between us. The recipe box sat open, no longer pretending to be ordinary. I placed the letter back inside with both hands. Then I closed the lid. This box is coming home with me, I said. Clara looked up quickly. One day, I told her, it will be yours. But not today. Not while everyone is still learning what it means. She nodded like she understood more than a 15-year-old should have to. Natalie's face tightened. So now I'm not even trusted with a recipe box? I looked at her for a long moment. No, I said. Not yet. The words were quiet, but they landed harder than shouting would have. I stood and lifted the box against my chest. It felt heavier now, though the papers were thin. Maybe because it no longer held only recipes. It held proof. It held warning. It held the difference between keeping peace and keeping what matters. As I walked toward the door, Clara's eyes followed the box. This time, she did not look at it like an old thing. She looked at it like a promise. Clara came back to my kitchen the following Sunday. She did not come with Natalie. She came with Mark, who waited in the car after walking her to the door. That small choice said more than any apology could have that day. The recipe box was already on the table. This time, no one called it clutter. No one asked what it was worth. Clara stood in front of it with both hands folded, like she was afraid to touch something sacred. I smiled and slid it toward her. "It's still just a recipe box," I said. "But now you know how to look." She opened the lid slowly. The old cards were still there. Cinnamon rolls. Lemon bars. Apple cake. My husband's notes tucked between my own, his crooked handwriting leaning across the years. Clara touched one card. "Can we make this one?" "The first one he ever ruined," I said. She laughed, and for the first time in days, the sound did not hurt. We measured flour. We warmed milk. I showed her how dough feels when it is ready, because some things cannot be learned from a scanned copy. The house smelled like butter and cinnamon by sunset. Natalie had not been forgiven. Not yet. But Clara was safe. The lake house was safe. And the box had returned to what it was always meant to be. Some things are never meant to be sold. Only remembered. And carefully passed on.